Hey everyone. We're all kind of obsessed with the idea of genius, right? That lone, brilliant mind who just sees the world differently and changes everything. But what if that whole picture we have is just wrong? What if it's built on a complete myth? Today, we're going to dive into what pop culture gets totally wrong about having a high IQ.
So, when I say the word genius, what pops into your head? I'm guessing it's someone like Einstein, maybe, or a fictional mastermind like Sherlock Holmes. We picture this person whose incredible brain power is basically a one-way ticket to a life of amazing achievements and success. And that is the exact myth we are going to unpack.
All right, so let's get right into it. The first and honestly the biggest misconception is this idea that a high IQ is like winning the lottery, a golden ticket, a guaranteed pass to an extraordinary life. But the real stories? They're often way more complicated and a whole lot more human.
Let's start with the absolutely incredible story of Kim Ung-Yong. This guy's early life sounds like it's straight out of a movie. I mean, he was reportedly solving calculus problems at age 3. By 5, he was fluent in 5 different languages. And the legend goes that at just 8 years old, he started working for NASA. He was the poster child for the genius dream. But then, at 16, he just walked away from it all.
And this is where we see the hidden cost. Because behind all the press conferences and the mind-bending equations, there was a deeply, deeply lonely child. As Kim himself said later, his colleagues were all adults, decades older than him. He had no one to be friends with. He was a boy genius who never really got the chance to just be a kid.
So when he returned to South Korea, just wanting to live a more normal life, the world that had put him on a pedestal was just baffled. The media immediately slapped him with the label failed genius. And why? Because he chose his own happiness over a public spectacle. He chose a quiet life as a professor over world-changing fame.
But his own perspective really gets to the heart of it all. He was finally succeeding, but on his own terms, finding a life that actually made him happy. And his story really forces us to ask a big question. Who exactly gets to define what success looks like? The public or the person actually living the life? Kim's experience isn't some rare one-off thing. Not at all. Research on profoundly gifted teenagers shows this same pattern again and again. All that potential doesn't always turn into what we'd call success because they're dealing with huge challenges. Things like social and emotional struggles, a deep need to be in control of their own lives that can lead to rebellion, and of course, the absolutely crushing weight of everyone's expectations, which can make them feel like a total fraud.
All right, now for our next myth. This is the idea that a super intelligent mind just naturally comes up with these ideas of profound clarity and beautiful simplicity. Yeah, about that. This one's fascinating.
So I want you to meet Christopher Langan. He's been called the smartest man in America, with an IQ that's reportedly pushing 200. He spent years of his life developing a grand theory of everything. You'd expect it to be a masterpiece of elegant simplicity, wouldn't you?
Well, he calls his theory the Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe, or CTMU for short. And trying to actually understand it is, well, it's a bit of a challenge. It's just filled with dense jargon and these complex circular concepts that are pretty much the opposite of clear.
And this quote right here just perfectly sums up how a lot of people reacted. A philosophy academic on Reddit put it so well. Basically, tons of people who tried to engage with Langan's theory, from real scholars to just people online, they found it impossible to get through. They argued that if you have a genuinely brilliant idea, you should be able to explain.
So here's the real point. We expect a genius to give us these world-changing truths with total clarity, but the reality can be theories that are so obscure and tangled up that very few people can understand them. Theories you can't even prove wrong, that have never been checked by other experts. And get this, some research suggests that being incredibly smart doesn't stop you from believing strange things. It might actually just make you better at justifying your own complicated and sometimes nonsensical ideas to yourself.
Okay, so if a high IQ isn't a golden ticket to success, and it's not a fountain of pure clarity, then what is the actual, lived reality of being profoundly gifted? Well, the research paints a picture that's a whole lot more complex and challenging.
One of the biggest challenges is this concept called asynchronous development. So imagine a 10-year-old kid who can understand university-level physics. Their mind is just on another plane. But emotionally, they still have the needs and social skills of a 10-year-old. That huge gap between their intellectual brain and their emotional heart can create some serious friction, both inside them and in how they deal with the world.
And that pressure is just captured so perfectly by this quote from a parent in a study on gifted kids, and it's really heartbreaking. The expectation isn't just to be successful, it's to be revolutionary. So anything short of curing cancer or discovering a new law of the universe can be seen by others and by themselves as a failure.
This kind of intense pressure is the perfect breeding ground for imposter syndrome. That same study found that many of these gifted teenagers live with this profound feeling of self-doubt. It's a constant fear that they aren't really as smart as everyone thinks they are, and that any day now they're going to be exposed as a total fraud.
So all of this really builds toward our final section and a much more complete and, frankly, more compassionate way of understanding what intelligence really is. So here's the bottom line. An IQ score measures one specific type of cognitive ability. That's it. It's not, and it was never ever intended to be, a measure of a person's value, their potential to be happy, or their ability to live a fulfilling life.
And that brings us right back around to Kim Ung-Yong. He chose a quiet life as a professor, a husband, and a father. Now, according to the genius myth, he failed. But by his own measure, the measure of happiness, he absolutely succeeded. So I ask you, was his life truly a failure?
Ultimately, when we look past these pop culture myths of genius, we're forced to face a much bigger, more personal question. If an IQ score doesn't define success, and fame doesn't define success, then what does? These stories challenge all of us to think about how we measure the value of a life, not just for other people, but, most importantly, for ourselves.